Okay, so let's dive in. The date is May 2nd, 2025. We're looking at South Asia, specifically India and Pakistan,
Mm.
and the atmosphere there. It's incredibly tense, way beyond the usual friction.
Yeah, you can really feel it. Two nuclear-armed neighbors locked in this, well, this standoff.
Exactly. And the big question, the one everyone's asking, is this going to tip over into actual war? Or is it another crisis they'll somehow manage to step back from?
It's a familiar pattern in some ways, this tension, but something about this particular escalation, it just feels heavier. It all really kicked off with that terror attack in Pahalgam on April 22nd.
Right, Pahalgam. It's always pictured as this beautiful, serene place in Indian-administered Kashmir. Like, postcard, perfect. People go there to escape.
Exactly. And then this happens. Armed militants attacking tourists.
And the scale of it.
Yeah.
26 people killed, 25 Indians, one Nepalese citizen. That's the deadliest attack since the Mumbai attacks way back in 2008.
It really is. And the details coming out are quite chilling, too. There are reports that the attackers were, like, checking names, apparently targeting Hindus specifically.
Which adds such a disturbing dimension. It's not just violence, it's deliberately inflammatory, trying to deepen those religious divides.
Precisely. It felt calculated, not random.
And almost immediately, India blamed Pakistan. So they were, harboring the people responsible.
Standard playbook, in a way. Then you had this group, the Resistance Front, claiming they did it. They're described as, what, a shadowy offshoot of Lashkar-e-Taiba?
Yeah, Lest-T, which everyone knows is Pakistan-based and UN designated as a terrorist group.
And, just as predictably, Pakistan came out with strong denials. Their defense minister even used the term false flag, suggesting India somehow staged it.
So attack, accusation, denial, we've seen it before. But the reactions this time from both sides, they've gone much further.
Oh, absolutely. Severe doesn't quite cover it. India's move on the Indus Waters Treaty, that's huge.
Isn't it just? That treaty's from 1960. It survived actual wars between them. And now India's suspending it.
It's fundamental. Pakistan gets something like 80% of its agricultural water from rivers that flow through India first, suspending that treaty. I mean, you can see why Pakistan called it an act of war.
It's an existential threat for them, potentially. Affects their food supply, everything.
Absolutely. It hits right at the core.
And it wasn't just the treaty. India also closed the Attari-Wagah border crossing.
Yeah, a major land route. Symbolic, too. Revoked visas for Pakistanis, kicked out diplomats. It's a real severing of ties.
Very comprehensive.
And Pakistan's response has been pretty tit for tat in many ways. Closing their airspace to Indian flights, that's a standard move. Expelling Indian envoys, same thing.
But threatening to ditch the Simla Agreement from 1972, that feels like a bigger step.
It really does. The Simla Agreement, that's what established the line of control of the Lasi after the 71 war. It's basically the framework for managing the Kashmir dispute, fragile as it is. Walking away from that, that's a major statement.
So you've got the diplomatic freeze, and then almost immediately after Pahalgam, the military side started heating up too. Around April 24th, reports of firing across the Lost Sea began.
Small arms fire, heavier exchanges. The Lasi is always tense. It's like 740 kilometers long and heavily militarized. But this was a definite uptick.
India claimed it was unprovoked, firing from the Pakistani side.
And Pakistan claimed they shot down an Indian drone near the line. Who knows the exact truth of each incident, but it shows how jumpy things are.
Definitely. Then, April 28th, Pakistan's defense minister came out with that warning. Said they had credible intelligence of an imminent Indian military strike.
Yeah, within 24 to 36 hours, he said, which, didn't actually happen immediately, by May 1st anyway.
But just putting that warning out there, it ramps up the pressure cooker, doesn't it? It could be psyops trying to deter India, or maybe they genuinely believed it. Either way, it raises the stakes.
It absolutely does. Puts everyone on higher alert, increases the risk of someone misreading a situation. And we did see reports of Air Force activity near the Lal Sea around April 30th. Both sides flexing, presumably.
And sadly, there have been real consequences on the ground. An Indian soldier was killed in Udhampur in a clash with insurgents, not directly on the Lal Sea, but related to the overall situation.
And that strange incident with the Indian Border Security Force soldier who apparently crossed the border accidentally and was captured by Pakistan.
Right. Seems almost surreal given everything else. Though the fact they're actually talking about releasing him might be a tiny, tiny sliver of, well, not hope exactly, but maybe functioning process.
Perhaps. It's something, I suppose. And let's not forget India's Navy conducting those long-range missile drills out in the Arabian Sea, another signal.
It all just adds to the picture.
Yeah.
And you really can't understand why this keeps happening, why it's so volatile, without looking back a bit. the Kashmir issue itself.
Absolutely. This isn't just about April 2025. This goes right back to 1947, the partition of British India.
Yeah, the messy, traumatic partition. And Kashmir, Muslim-majority state, but ruled by a Hindu Maharaja who initially couldn't decide whether to join India or Pakistan.
That hesitation was key. Then tribal invaders came in from the Pakistani side, prompting the Maharaja to accede to India.
Which immediately led to the First India-Pakistan War, right there at independence.
Exactly. And that war basically set the rough boundaries we still see. India controls about 55%, including Jammu and the Kashmir Valley. Pakistan controls around 30%, what they call Azad Kashmir and Gilgit Baltistan. And China holds a piece too.
And the line of control, the Lock Sea, drawn out with the 1971 war, it's never been a proper border. It's just this heavily fortified ceasefire line, a constant flashpoint.
For decades now, and fueling it all has been this insurgency within Indian-administered Kashmir. India consistently accuses Pakistan of supporting it, training, arming militants.
While Pakistan says it's just giving political and moral support for Kashmiri self-determination.
The reality is probably, messy and complex, involving both local grievances and external factors.
But the cost, the human cost since, say, 1989, when the insurgency really took off. It's staggering. Tens of thousands dead, civilians, soldiers, militants, just generations caught up in it.
And then India's move in 2019, revoking Article 370, Kashmir's special status, that really changed the dynamic again.
Hugely controversial. India argued it was for integration and development, but many Kashmiris felt their autonomy was just stripped away. It definitely deepened alienation for many.
It's such a paradox. You had this recent boom in tourism, things maybe felt a bit calmer on the surface.
Right, a sense of fragile normalcy returning maybe, and then bang, Pahalgam happens.
Yeah.
A brutal reminder of how volatile it still is.
And layered on top of all this history, all this political tension, you have the nuclear dimension, which is frankly terrifying.
It really is. Both sides have nuclear weapons. The estimates vary, but something like, 160 warheads for India, maybe 170 for Pakistan?
Somewhere in that ballpark, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Enough to cause unimaginable devastation.
There was that study a few years back, 2019, I think, by climate scientists. They modeled a nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan.
I remember that. The projections were just catastrophic, not just for the region, but globally. Something like 50 million direct deaths, but then global agriculture collapsing, famines. It affects everyone.
It's not just their problem, is it? It could become everyone's problem very quickly.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they've come close before. The Kargil War in 1999, that was a conventional conflict, but it had nuclear undertones. Many believe they were perilously close then.
International pressure helped pull them back that time.
And again in 2019, after the Pulwama attack and India's Balakot airstrikes,
Right.
Pakistan retaliated, captured an Indian pilot. Things got very tense, very fast. De-escalation happened, but it was another close call.
So history, nukes.
Yeah.
What about the current situation, the economics, the politics right now?
Well, Pakistan's economy is in a really precarious state. High inflation dependent on IMF loans. Conflict would be economically ruinous for them, even if it might, rally some nationalistic support short term.
Right, and India.
Yeah.
Much bigger economy, fifth largest in the world, growing fast. But they've got a lot to lose too, right? A war could scare off global investment, hit their tech sector, damage their image as a rising, stable power.
Definitely. Both sides have strong economic incentives not to let this escalate fully.
But then there's domestic politics.
Mm.
Prime Minister Modi in India has a strong nationalist base that expects a firm response.
And Prime Minister Sharif in Pakistan, he has to consider the powerful military establishment. He can't afford to look weak. So both leaders are under pressure domestically.
It's a tough balancing act for them.
What's also striking this time, maybe compared to 2019, is the international reaction, or maybe the lack of it. It feels a bit muted.
Yeah, I thought that too. You'd expect, given the stakes, more frantic diplomacy. But the U.S. seems distracted. President Trump's comments were basically sorted out.
Secretary of State Rubio made the usual calls for de-escalation, urged cooperation on the Pahalgam investigation, but it doesn't feel like Washington is putting its full weight behind mediating this time.
And China. They've called for restraint, sure. But they're also Pakistan's all-weather ally, and they have their own border issues with India. It's complicated.
They do have significant investments in Pakistan via the Belt and Road Initiative, so instability isn't really in their interest either. They probably want things to cool down, but maybe quietly.
We hear about some quiet nudging from Gulf states who have ties with both. The UN offered its good offices, but that often feels symbolic.
It really contrasts with 2019 when U.S. and other Western pressure seemed quite significant in getting things de-escalated after the pilot was captured. That strong diplomatic safety net feels less present now.
Which is worrying.
Yeah.
So, okay, looking ahead, what are the realistic scenarios here? Full-scale war seems unlikely because of the nukes, right?
That seems to be the consensus, yeah. The nuclear deterrent holds, hopefully. India has conventional superiority, but Pakistan's nukes are the equalizer. The risk is just too high.
So what then? Limited strikes. Could India feel it has to do something like hit suspected militant camps again?
That's certainly plausible. Domestic pressure might demand some kind of visible retaliation. But the risk there is Pakistan's response. They have this policy, or at least they talk about it, quid pro quo plus, respond slightly harder than whatever India does.
Which is just a recipe for escalation, potentially uncontrolled escalation.
Exactly, it's playing with fire. Another possibility is what some people call managed hostility. Lots of noise, military posturing, maybe some limited firing across the Sea, harsh rhetoric, and then things gradually calm down again.
Like both sides show strength, satisfy domestic audiences, but pull back before it gets truly dangerous. The fact that military hotlines are apparently still being used, like that call on April 30th, maybe suggests communication channels aren't totally severed.
That's a possibility. External pressure could also play a role. Maybe China leans on Pakistan to protect its investments. Maybe the U.S. steps in more forcefully if things look like they're really about to boil over.
But the biggest danger, it feels like, is just miscalculation. An accident, a misinterpreted signal, some rogue element launching an attack.
Absolutely. That Pakistani claim about credible intelligence of an Indian strike, whether it was real intelligence, a misunderstanding, or even disinformation, it highlights how easily perceptions can diverge and lead to dangerous actions.
And amidst all this high-level maneuvering, we absolutely have to remember the people caught in the middle. In Kashmir, most tourist sites are shut. That kills the local economy.
Yeah.
People are living in fear of militants, fear of security crackdowns. There have been hundreds of arrests, apparently, which just breeds more resentment.
Yeah, the cycle continues. And in Pakistan, ordinary people are already struggling economically. Any conflict, even limited, just means more hardship, potential food shortages, prices going up, trade disrupted. It's devastating.
And thinking back to the start, the victims in Pahalgam, tourists enjoying a holiday, it brings it back to that human level. This isn't a game of chess. It's about real lives.
Absolutely. So right now, May 2nd, no war, but incredibly tense. Relations are probably at their lowest point in years.
The nuclear shadow is always there. But historically, both countries have found ways to step back from the absolute brink.
Let's hope that history repeats itself.
And for you listening, this might seem far away, but a major conflict there could impact global markets, energy prices, maybe even food supplies down the line. India's tech sector is globally important. Pakistan's economy is fragile. The ripples could spread.
The best hope is for quiet, back-channel diplomacy to work. For both leaders to realize that de-escalation, even if it's politically tough at home, is ultimately the stronger, safer path.
It really leaves you thinking, though. In a world that's so interconnected, facing climate change, pandemics, all these other huge challenges,
Yeah.
how sustainable is this kind of recurring crisis between two nuclear powers?
Yeah.
What responsibility does the rest of the world have, or what can it even do in situations like this?